This video will cover Flood Series 101 on properly designing and setting up a PurWater Flood Series reclaim system and above ground tanking. Startup and maintenance, as well as the required components such as pipe connections and electrical connections, will be presented to allow you to better understand the operation of reclaiming water. In the case that above ground tanking is the only option, we will look at the necessary requirements. For Flood Series reclaim systems, we are looking for a required minimum of 1,500 gallons. This can be achieved by using 3 tanks that are each 500 gallons. Though PurWater recommends conical bottom tanks, flat bottom tanks are acceptable too. All of the plumbing connections should be Schedule 80 PVC. First, we have a connection, typically a 6-inch pipe, that is feeding the wash water into a catch basin or pit. From there, a lift station such as a submersible pump or a ground level pump will lift the water from the catch basin to the first above ground tank. Though there are no baffles in the tanks, the plumbing connections are similar to the underground tanking setup. To connect each tank together, an interconnect with a T and an elbow are added. The interconnect should be placed around mid-level of the water level. This will allow the cleanest water to pass through to each tank, since the solids will settle and the oils will stay up top. The recirculation line is to be plumbed to the second tank, which is where the Sparger is to be mounted. The very last tank is where the suction line is to be plumbed. A low-level float is installed in this tank as well. This should be mounted at least 6 to 8 inches above the suction line. And lastly, an overflow connection back to the catch basin. The reclaim system is built on a small footprint. The system measures 4 feet wide, 2 feet deep, and just over 4 feet tall. You should leave a 6 to 7 foot wide clearance for the system and plumbing in the equipment room. The Flood Series system requires 4 plumbing connections: a suction line, a recirculation line, the underflow, and the reclaim water or product water out to the wash applications. All of the plumbing should land on the right side of the reclaim system. You will need a suction line, a recirculation line, the underflow line, which is plumbed back to the catch basin or the car wash pit, and lastly, the product water line that will feed reclaimed water to your wash applications. Do not reduce this line size until reaching the wash equipment to prevent flow restriction and pressure reduction. The Sparger is a device that injects air as the recirculated reclaimed water passes through it. This helps to keep the bacterial growth down in the tanks. The Sparger should be mounted on the second tank. Whether you use the manway or cut a hole in the tank for the Sparger pipe, the supplied Sparger bracket is to be mounted to the top of the tank. Once this is mounted, the Sparger assembly will mount to the tank bracket. Lastly, connect the recirculation line to the Sparger's 1-inch port with a union for ease of maintenance. The reclaim system is pre-wired and is pretty close to a plug-and-play design. A single-phase connection is required. 3-phase power is also required. A low-level float connection is simply plugged into the bottom of the control box. You will need at least one activation from the wash to tell the reclaim system you are demanding reclaim water. This can land on any of the two activations. Terminals 1 and 2 are the first activation. Terminals 3 and 4 are the second. You can also wire more than one activation. To review, the single-phase power can either be 110 volt AC or 220 volt AC. Three-phase power can be 208/230 VAC, 460 VAC, or 575 VAC. There is one float connection, and you need at least one voltage activation from the wash. This can be 24 volt DC, 24 volt AC, 110 volt AC, or 220 volt AC. The first step in starting up a Flood Series reclaim system is to ensure all the plumbing connections, such as unions, are snug and tight. Now, loosen the lid on the basket strainer. Open the ball valve on the suction line to allow the water from the tanks to fill the suction line and basket strainer. Once the water spills over the basket strainer, tighten down the dog ear bolts. Next, you need to turn on the red and yellow disconnect switch. You will see the PLC inside the control box light up. Now the red light will turn on, saying that the float is down. At this point, plug in the low-level float. The pump will start up, and you should build up to at least 40 to 60 psi on the pump. If you don't build up pressure, you may have to reprime the pump again, or possibly the pump is spinning backwards. When the pump starts up, you should check the pump rotation. While standing at the back of the motor, looking towards the pump, the shaft should be spinning clockwise. If it is not, simply change 2 of the 3-phase power lines. The last step is to provide a signal from the car wash to activate the reclaim system. This will ensure that the reclaim water is getting to the wash equipment. The PurWater Flood Series maintenance is fairly simple and should not be overlooked. First off, a daily check should be applied to make sure the reclaim system is running and operational. Once a week, the basket strainer needs to be cleaned. Start with turning the red and yellow disconnect off. Now, close the ball valve on the suction line. Remove the basket lid. Pull the basket out and clean it thoroughly. Once the basket is clean, place it back into the housing. Now replace the lid and dog ear bolts. Do not tighten them all the way. Now open or crack the ball valve on the suction line to prime the basket. Tighten down the dog ear bolts once the water is overflowing. Turn the red and yellow disconnect back on and watch the pump pressure. You should build up to at least 40 to 60 psi on the pump and hold that steady. Once the pump is running, open the underflow ball valve on the bottom of the cyclone to flush out the solids that were spun out and collected. This should be open for at least a minute to ensure all the solids are flushed out. The Sparger located on the top of the second tank should be checked once every 6 months to ensure air is being drawn into it. With the water running through the Sparger line, simply place your finger over the air port. You should feel vacuum or suction on your finger. If you do not, you may need to remove and disassemble the Sparger to make sure it is not clogged. Once a quarter to every 6 months, all of the tanks will need to be pumped out and cleaned. This is done to remove the settled solids and oils collected in the tanks. If the tanks are not pumped out, there is potential threat of the reclaim basket clogging and/or passing dirty reclaim water out to the wash. Choosing your chemistry while reclaiming water is important. The compatibility with your reclaimed water and chemistry should not be overlooked. 2 items we do not want in reclaimed water are MSO, or mineral seal oil, and silicone from tire shine applications. Please refer to your chemistry provider and discuss your options of using reclaim-friendly chemicals. The reclaim system and tanking require the attention of the site work contractors, electricians, plumbers, and general contractors. New Wave Industries is willing to assist in any way possible, but the installation team of contractors is key to getting the tanking, plumbing, and electrical work done correctly. Hopefully this video helped illustrate the requirements of a PurWater reclaim system.